They stuck me with the worst room on the family trip. They had no idea I owned the hotel. Trigger warning. This story contains themes of emotional abuse and family manipulation. Opening with a soft, melancholic piano fading into a tense, dramatic orchestral sting, then a sudden, jarring silence. Could you imagine living your entire life as the family's invisible ghost, constantly dismissed, belittled, and told you're not good enough, only to find out you secretly own the very empire they're all fighting over? The truth was, every cutting remark, every sneer, every calculated insult they threw at me was happening under my roof. And the moment I decided to drop that bombshell, oh, it was exquisite. I always braced myself for our annual family reunion. My mother swore by the tradition, but for me, it was a yearly gauntlet of comparisons and thinly veiled jabs. This time, though, it was different. We were staying at the luxurious Hotel Miramar, a place of impeccable gardens and ocean views, and it was mine. Grandfather had secretly left it to me 6 months prior. My heart was practically hammering against my ribs as I stepped into the grand lobby. I watched my sister Lucia, always the family favorite, get enveloped in a storm of hugs and smiles. No one even saw me until my mother spotted me and her smile instantly faltered. "I thought you wouldn't come, Carmen," she said, not even attempting to hide her disappointment. It was a dagger, straight to the gut. "Oh, I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, a smile stretched across my face that felt completely fake. Lucia's husband, Roberto, my brother-in-law, eyed me up and down. "Seems the graphic design business isn't so lucrative after all," he drawled, a smirk playing on his lips. If only he knew. My small company was now a respected agency, with international clients and a revenue that would make his eyes water. But I never corrected them. Why bother? The secret was heavy, but also strangely empowering. This 5-star resort, this opulent paradise, was all mine. Grandfather, bless his soul, had always seen something in me that the others simply refused to acknowledge. Then came the room assignments. My mother, in her usual, self-appointed manager role, announced the distribution as Miguel, the hotel manager, handed out the keys. Lucia and Roberto? The presidential suite with an ocean view. My parents? An executive suite. Cousins got deluxe rooms. And me? "Carmen, you'll be in room 108 on the first floor," she declared. The one next to the laundry. Smallest, noisiest room in the hotel. A hush fell. I saw glances exchanged, some shame, some poorly disguised amusement. Miguel looked visibly uncomfortable. "Ma'am," he started, "we could find another option for Miss Carmen." My mother cut him off. "It's not necessary. Carmen is simple. She doesn't need luxuries." I caught Miguel's eye. He knew. He knew who I really was. But we'd agreed to keep my ownership a secret for this reunion. "It's fine, Miguel," I said, my voice calm, almost unnervingly so. "Room 108 will be perfect." I took the key. As I walked to the elevator, I felt their eyes boring into my back. My cousin Daniela's whisper floated up to me. "As always, Carmen settles for the leftovers." Room 108. It was exactly as I remembered it from visits with grandfather. Small, a window overlooking the service area, the constant drone of laundry machines. I sat on the single bed, took a deep, shuddering breath. I wasn't here to expose them. Not yet. I was here to understand. To understand why, after 30 years, they still saw me as the least valuable, the forgotten one. That night, at the welcome dinner, my family sprawled across the best table in the hotel restaurant. My chair? Half hidden behind a column. While they ordered the most expensive dishes, I chose a simple salad. "Can you afford something better?" "Carmen," my father asked, a mix of mockery and pity in his voice. "We can treat you if you want." "The salad is fine, thank you," I replied, holding on to my dignity with both hands. The conversation, as always, revolved around Lucia's triumphs, her new promotion, her exclusive new house. Our Lucia always knew what she wanted, my mother beamed. Not like Carmen, who wasted her life with this, drawing business. Then, the head chef, Antonio, approached our table. He greeted everyone, but his eyes locked with mine. He gave a small, respectful bow that no one else seemed to notice. Was the salad to your liking, Miss Carmen? He asked, his voice low. Delicious, Antonio, I replied, a genuine warmth in my voice. My family stared. You know the chef? Lucia asked, bewildered. We've crossed paths, I said vaguely. The truth was, I'd personally hired Antonio 3 months ago. He was a genius. As the night wore on, fueled by wine, their comments grew sharper, more personal. The secret felt like a physical weight in my chest. Should I tell them? What would they do if they knew every insult, every humiliation, was happening in my own hotel? Miguel appeared discreetly. Miss Carmen, an urgent matter requires your attention, he murmured. Urgent for Carmen? Roberto scoffed. Did they run out of colored pencils? I stood up calmly, ignoring him. Excuse me. I'll be back. In the private office, Miguel looked distraught. Miss, I can't keep watching this. You're the owner of this place. I know, Miguel, I sighed, looking out at the dark, vast sea. But I need to understand something first. There's a deep family wound here, and I think I'm close to finding out why they hate me so much. I returned to the table. My cousin Javier was mid-story about his new sports car. Then, my Aunt Elena, sharp as ever, asked, What did that employee want with you, Carmen? Do you know him from somewhere? All eyes were on me. Just a confusion with a reservation, I said casually, taking a sip of water. Typical Carmen, Lucia murmured to Roberto, just loud enough. Always causing problems. That night, as everyone retired to their opulent rooms, I stayed in the deserted lobby. Miguel brought me a cup of tea. Your grandfather would be proud of you, he said softly. Don Ernesto always knew you would be the one to best care for his legacy. A melancholic smile touched my lips. He was the only one. Sometimes I wonder if he wasn't mistaken. Miguel shook his head firmly. In the few months you've been here, you've made more improvements than any previous owner. The staff respects you. Don Ernesto was not mistaken. The next morning, at the breakfast buffet, I noticed several staff members greeting me with subtle deference. My family, however, was too engrossed in the exclusive delicacies to notice. Carmen, is that all you're eating? My mother asked, eyeing my plate of fruit and yogurt. That's why you're so thin. You look sick. I'm perfectly healthy, Mom, I replied. I just prefer something light. Roberto barked with laughter. Light? Economical, you mean. I bet you count every penny. The table erupted in laughter. I took a deep breath, focusing on my food. Not yet. Not the time for revelations. The morning unfolded with more of the same. Pool, spa, tours. Of course, Lucia and Roberto got the best treatments. For me? I'm sorry, Carmen, my mother said, with fake disappointment. It seems there's no space left for the premium massage. You'll have to settle for the basic. Later, I discovered she deliberately canceled my premium reservation, claiming it would be a waste on Carmen. At lunch, the conversation inevitably drifted to Grandfather Ernesto's inheritance. I'll never understand why Dad sold the hotel before he died, my mother sighed dramatically. It was his greatest pride. He must have received an irresistible offer, my father mused. Too bad we never knew who bought it. Lucia sighed dramatically. If the hotel were still ours, we could stay for free. We could even give Carmen a decent room, she added, as if it were a great favor. I suppressed a smile. If only they knew. That afternoon, while my parents and Lucia enjoyed a yacht tour, I slipped into what used to be my grandfather's office, now my private office. Miguel was waiting with a box. I found what you asked for, Miss Carmen, he said, placing it on the desk. All your grandfather's personal documents related to your family. I began sifting through letters, photographs, diaries. My breath hitched when I found a yellowed envelope, dated 15 years ago. It contained a letter from my mother to my grandfather. Dad, it read, you have to understand that Carmen isn't like us. She never was. If you keep treating her as your favorite, you'll only hurt her. She doesn't have what it takes to succeed in this family. Lucia is the one who should inherit the hotel someday. My hands were shaking. I found more letters from her, spanning years. Letters where she systematically tried to convince grandfather I didn't deserve his attention, his inheritance. Letters detailing my supposed failures and weaknesses. Then, a handwritten note from my grandfather, never sent. Isabel, he'd written to my mother, it saddens me to see how you treat your own daughter. Carmen has a spirit and intelligence you can't even see. Someday, you'll all realize the mistake you've made. The discovery hit me like a tidal wave. It wasn't just envy. Not just rivalry. My own mother had actively orchestrated my marginalization. "Are you all right, miss?" Miguel asked, noticing my silence. "No," I replied, my voice tight. "But I will be." I kept reading, and found something even more disturbing. My father and Roberto had tried to manipulate grandfather to force him to sell them the hotel at a ridiculously low price, just before he died. Their plan had failed. Grandfather, suspicious, had decided to secretly leave it to me. A knock. "Daniela, my cousin." "Carmen, what are you doing here?" "This area is for authorized personnel only," she said, eyes wide, glancing at the documents. Miguel quickly interjected. Miss Carmen was looking for some information about the hotel's activities. Daniela didn't look convinced. Her eyes narrowed, scrutinizing the office. "Isn't it strange they let you into the private office? They wouldn't even let us look." "Maybe I'm not as insignificant as everyone thinks," I said, holding her gaze. Something shifted in her expression. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt. "You were always grandfather's favorite," she said slowly. "We all knew it, even if no one would admit it. When Daniela left, I knew my secret wouldn't last much longer. The family would start to suspect. And I would have to make a choice, continue enduring their humiliations, or reveal that I, the despised Carmen, now owned the empire they all coveted." That night, during the formal dinner, the storm that had been brewing since my arrival finally broke. And with it, the opportunity for a kind of revenge I never knew I craved. The gala dinner. The main hall, bedecked with fresh flowers, shimmering crystals. I arrived deliberately late, wearing a simple, elegant black dress I'd designed myself. "Finally, you appear," my mother snapped, irritated. "We were about to order without you." I took my seat, once again, the least favorable spot at the table. Roberto was already half drunk, boasting about his real estate investments. "Bought 3 properties on the coast last month," he slurred. "If I play my cards right, I could even buy a hotel like this someday." Lucia smiled proudly. "My husband has vision. Unlike other family members who are content drawing logos." My father raised his glass to Roberto and Lucia. The true pride of this family. Everyone toasted. My glass remained on the table. No one noticed. Until Daniela. She'd been watching me intently. "Carmen," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter, "I saw you today in the hotel's private office. You seemed very comfortable there." A sudden, jarring silence fell over the table. All eyes on me. "What were you doing in restricted areas?" my father demanded, a frown deepening on his face. I took a sip of water. "I was investigating some things about the hotel." "Why would you do that?" my mother asked. "It's not like you're going to buy one." Roberto let out a thunderous laugh. "Carmen owning a hotel? That would be rich. She can't even afford a decent room." It was then that Miguel approached our table, a bottle of exclusive champagne in hand. "Miss Carmen, the champagne you requested for your family," he announced. My mother blinked, confused. "We didn't order any." "It's complimentary," Miguel said. From me, I interrupted calmly. "From you." Lucia practically choked. "How could you afford a bottle that probably costs more than your monthly rent?" Miguel began to serve the champagne. The tension at the table was thick enough to cut with a knife. "There are many things about me you don't know," I said simply. My father looked at me, suspicion clouding his face. "What are you talking about, Carmen? If you have something to say, say it." I weighed my options. I could reveal it all. Humiliate them as they'd humiliated me for years. Revenge served on a silver platter. But as I looked at their faces, something shifted inside me. I didn't want to become like them. "I just wanted to make a kind gesture," I replied. "To celebrate that we're together as a family, despite everything." The surprise on their faces was palpable. They hadn't expected generosity. The dinner continued, but something had fundamentally changed. Daniela watched me, a flicker of intrigue in her eyes. She was recalculating. During dessert, Lucia brought up the inheritance again. I never understood why grandfather sold the hotel in secret. It was our family patrimony. "Maybe," I replied, looking directly at my father and Roberto, because he knew some would try to take advantage. What are you insinuating? Roberto jumped, suddenly defensive. Nothing, I said calmly. Just that grandfather was more astute than everyone thought. My father looked at me, a mixture of suspicion and nervousness. Carmen, if you know something about the hotel sale, you should share it with the family. Now I'm part of the family? I asked. How curious. A few hours ago, I was the poor relative who didn't even deserve a decent room. An uncomfortable silence. My mother tried to change the subject, but I pressed on. You know, grandfather told me many things. I spent hours with him while you were all busy with your important lives. He told me about his plans for the hotel, about what he wanted for his legacy. And what did he say? Lucia asked, unable to hide her curiosity. He told me that a family business is like a mirror. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. It reflects the values of those who run it, and that you always have to be careful with deceptive appearances. Roberto slammed his fist on the table. Enough riddles. If you have something to say it clearly. At that exact moment, Javier, the hotel's general manager, approached our table. Excuse the interruption, he said smoothly. I just wanted to make sure everything was to your liking. Especially for you, Miss Carmen. My family stared, bewildered by the preferential treatment. Everything is perfect, Javier. Thank you, I replied with a genuine smile. Why the hell do they treat you like you're someone important? My father demanded. I took a deep breath. I hadn't planned to reveal it all tonight, but the situation was escalating. I had to make a choice. Because they know my work, I replied. They simply respect what I do. Drawing logos? Roberto scoffed. I design corporate identity for international companies, I corrected, my voice unwavering. My agency has clients on 3 continents and 30 employees. Last year, our revenue exceeded $3 million. The shock on their faces was immediate. My mother almost dropped her glass. You're lying, Lucia accused. If you were so successful, you would have bragged about it. Unlike some, I said, a cold edge to my voice, I don't need constant validation from others. And there's a difference between humility and allowing myself to be treated like trash. If you're so successful, why did you accept staying in that horrible room? My mother asked, genuinely confused. Because I wanted to see how far you would take it, I replied honestly, my voice breaking slightly. I wanted to understand if there was any limit to the contempt you feel for me. My words fell like heavy stones. For the first time, I saw shame on some of their faces. Not all, but it was a start. Carmen. My father began, but I cut him off. I'm not finished, I said, my voice firm. For years, I endured your comments, your pitying looks, your constant contempt. All because I didn't follow the path you considered appropriate. Because I chose to create instead of destroy. To build instead of manipulate. My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady. It was as if decades of silence had finally found their voice. Grandfather taught me that a person's value isn't in what they possess or the appearances they maintain. It's in how they treat others. He saw something in me that you could never see. Because you were too busy comparing me to your idea of success. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see emotions swirling across their faces, disbelief, shame, confusion, and in some, the dawning of an uncomfortable realization. If this is true, my father finally said, why did you never say anything? Would you have listened? I asked, my gaze piercing. Or would you have found another way to minimize my achievements? He had no answer. We all knew the truth. The dinner ended in uncomfortable silence. As the others retired, Daniela stayed behind, sliding into the seat beside me. I always knew you were different, she said quietly. Grandfather used to tell me to watch you, to learn from you. I never understood why until now. Our eyes met, a moment of profound, mutual understanding. Carmen, she continued, there's something more, isn't there? Something about this hotel and grandfather that you haven't said. I nodded slowly. And tomorrow, everyone will know. The next morning dawned with an unusual clarity. From my modest room next to the laundry, I could hear the hum of the machines mixing with birdsong. I dressed carefully, choosing an ivory-tailored suit, reserved for special occasions. Today was definitely one of those. At breakfast, The dynamics had subtly shifted. My family watched me with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. The mockery had ceased, replaced by an uncomfortable silence and furtive glances. My revelation last night had shaken their foundations. But they still didn't know the whole truth. My mother was the first to approach. "Carmen, dear," she said, a tense smile on her face, "we didn't know your business was doing so well. You should have told us." "I tried, Mom." My voice was calm, without a trace of bitterness. "For years. Every time I mentioned a new client or an important project, you changed the subject to talk about Lucia's achievements." My sister had the decency to blush. "Well, the important thing is that now we know," my father interjected, adopting a conciliatory tone he'd never used with me before. "We're proud of you, of course." Roberto, however, remained skeptical. $3 million in annual revenue. "That's impressive, if it's true," he commented, emphasizing the last part. "Although revenue isn't the same as profit, of course." "My profit margin last year was 28%, I replied, without missing a beat. "After taxes." His expression transformed, surprise, then something that looked almost like respect. At 10 o'clock, Miguel appeared. "Miss Carmen, everything is ready for the meeting you requested." My family looked at me strangely. "I organized a small presentation about the hotel's history," I explained, standing up. "I thought it would interest you, considering how important it was to grandfather." We headed to the main conference room, an elegant space with panoramic ocean views. Inside, to my family's surprise, wasn't just the hotel's management team, but also an older, distinguished man I recognized immediately, Arturo Mendez, my grandfather's lawyer. "What does this mean, Carmen?" my father asked, suddenly alarmed. "Please, take your seats," I gestured to the front row. Once they were all seated, I stood before them. My heart was pounding, but my voice remained steady. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, this hotel was the crown jewel of Grandfather Ernesto's businesses. He built it from scratch, transforming a small inn into one of the most prestigious establishments on the coast." I activated the projector, showing old photographs. My family watched with a mix of nostalgia and confusion. "What you may not know," I continued, "is what really happened to the hotel after his death." My mother tensed visibly. "Grandfather sold the hotel before dying. We never knew to whom." "That's not entirely accurate," Lawyer Mendez intervened, standing beside me. "Don Ernesto didn't sell the hotel. He transferred it to a trust." "A trust," my father repeated, frowning. "Why weren't we informed?" "Because it wasn't relevant to you," Mendez replied with professional coldness. "The trust had a single beneficiary." All eyes turned to me. I could see the pieces clicking into place in their minds. "It can't be," Lucia whispered. I nodded slowly. "Grandfather left me the hotel. I've been the owner for 6 months." The silence was absolute, as if even the air had stopped moving. Their expressions ranged from utter disbelief to indignation, passing through the deepest shock. Roberto was the first to recover his voice. "This is absurd. Why would he leave you, precisely you, his most valuable possession?" "That's an excellent question," I replied, looking directly at my parents. "And I think Mom might have some idea." My mother paled instantly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I found your letters, Mom," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "The ones you wrote to Grandfather, trying to convince him that I didn't deserve his attention or his inheritance." Several gasps rippled through the room. My mother seemed to shrink in her chair. "I also found something else." I signaled Miguel, who delivered a folder to each family member. Documents confirming that Dad and Roberto tried to manipulate Grandfather into selling them the hotel at a reduced price shortly before his death. My father opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of emails, fraudulent purchase proposals, false appraisals. This is taken out of context," he stammered. "No, it's not," Lawyer Mendez intervened. "Don Ernesto showed me these documents. That's when he decided to modify his will and leave the hotel in trust to Carmen, the only person he truly trusted to preserve his legacy." Roberto stood up abruptly, his face red with anger. "This is a conspiracy. You certainly manipulated the old man or the lawyer. You don't have what it takes to run a business like this." The results suggest otherwise, I replied calmly. In the 6 months since I took control, the hotel's revenue has increased 18%. Customer satisfaction has improved. And we've been nominated for 2 Hospitality Excellence Awards. Miguel nodded, confirming everything. The management team present swelled with pride. My mother seemed truly confused. If you're the owner, why did you accept staying in that horrible room? Why did you allow us to treat you like that? It was the question I'd been waiting for. Because I needed to understand, I replied, my voice finally cracking with emotion. Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. I needed to comprehend if you really saw me as worthless, or if there was some deeper reason for your contempt. And what I discovered was even more painful than I imagined. It's not that you believed I had no value, Mom. It's that you feared what would happen if others saw my value. Especially Grandfather. My mother lowered her gaze, unable to meet mine. The letters show it clearly, Mom. You couldn't stand that Grandfather loved me. You couldn't accept that he saw something special in me. Why? What did I do to deserve this? The silence that followed was broken by a muffled sob. It was my mother. She seemed to have collapsed under the weight of decades of secrets. You were just like him, she finally murmured. You had the same look, the same way of seeing the world. When you were little, he used to say you were his living image, that you had his entrepreneurial spirit. She paused, breathing raggedly. And I was always a disappointment to him. I was never smart enough, ambitious enough, and then you appeared, with your creativity and determination. I saw how his eyes lit up when talking to you in a way they never did with me. The revelation landed like a bomb. Decades of resentment. Maternal jealousy. A competition I never even knew I was in. So you decided to make sure I never shone, I concluded, a mixture of understanding and searing pain in my voice. You convinced the whole family that I was less. That my dreams weren't worth it. My mother didn't deny it. She couldn't. And you. I addressed my father. You saw a business opportunity. If I stayed marginalized, I wouldn't be a threat to your plans with the hotel. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years. Lucia remained silent, processing everything. It was then that I made the most important decision of all. Despite everything, I said finally, breaking the dense silence, I'm still part of this family. My words seemed to hang in the air, unexpected. We're not here for a settling of scores, I continued. I could have humiliated you from the beginning, expelled you from the hotel, treated you as you treated me. But that would only perpetuate the cycle of resentment that has poisoned this family for too long. My mother looked at me, eyes red, a mixture of shame and amazement on her face. When Grandfather left me this hotel, I didn't completely understand why. Now I know. It wasn't just about the business. It was about giving us a chance to heal. I walked to the large window, gazing at the same sea my grandfather contemplated every morning. Grandfather left something else in the trust, I announced, turning back to them. A letter. To be delivered to the family 6 months after I took possession of the hotel. That is today. Lawyer Mendez nodded, taking an envelope from his briefcase. He handed it to me solemnly. This is Don Ernesto's last wish, beyond the legal aspects, Mendez explained. He specifically requested it be read in the presence of the entire family. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. I extracted the pages, written in my grandfather's unmistakable hand, and began reading aloud. Dear family, I read, my voice clear despite the emotion. If you are hearing these words, it means Carmen has assumed her role as owner of Hotel Miramar. And the time has come for you to know my true reasons. This hotel represents my legacy. But a legacy is not just walls and business. A legacy is also the values we transmit to the generations that follow us. For years, I watched sadly as our family fragmented. I saw the contempt for Carmen, the person who, ironically, most resembles me in spirit and vision. Isabel, my dear daughter, always tried to prove her worth to me by competing with her own daughter. It wasn't necessary. I loved her for who she was, not for who she believed she should be to impress me. Roberto and Lucia built their lives on appearances and superficial ambitions. True success is not measured in properties or status, but in the integrity with which we live. I left the hotel to Carmen, not only because I trust her ability to manage it, but because I trust her heart to heal our family's wounds. My last wish is that you use this revelation as an opportunity to reflect, to acknowledge past mistakes, and to build a future where mutual respect replaces contempt, where family love is stronger than individual ambitions. The hotel now legally belongs to Carmen, but spiritually, it belongs to all of you, if you are willing to build a new family dynamic based on respect and acceptance. With eternal love, Ernesto. When I finished, several people in the room, including some of the hotel staff, had tears in their eyes. The silence was charged with emotion, with realization, with truths denied for too long. My mother was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. All this time, she murmured. All this time, competing with my own daughter, trying to prove something to a father who already loved me. She stood slowly, and to my surprise, approached me. Carmen, I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I was a terrible mother, blinded by my own insecurities. I saw in her eyes something I had never seen before, genuine recognition, vulnerability, and the beginning of deep regret. My father, meanwhile, seemed utterly devastated. Your grandfather was right, he admitted, almost to himself. I built my whole life trying to impress others, forgetting what really matters. Lucia remained seated, silent, an indescribable expression on her face. Finally, she stood and walked to me. I never understood why grandfather preferred you, she said slowly. Now I see. While I sought his approval, you sought his wisdom. While I wanted his money, you wanted his legacy. There was no hostility in her voice, just a sad acceptance. Roberto, however, didn't seem moved. He stood abruptly, his face red with indignation. And I suppose now we should feel guilty, that we should congratulate you for inheriting an empire you didn't build? He looked at Lucia, expecting her support. But she remained by my side. Roberto, I said calmly. The hotel is legally mine. That won't change. But what we do from here, as a family, depends on all of us. Lawyer Mendez cleared his throat discreetly. Actually, there's an additional clause that we haven't discussed yet. We all turned to him. Don Ernesto established that at Carmen's discretion, and solely at her discretion, she could assign minority stakes in the hotel to other family members, provided they demonstrated commitment to the values he defended. The revelation landed like a bomb. My family now looked at me with a mixture of hope and fear. I'm not seeking servility in exchange for shares, I clarified. What grandfather wanted was genuine reconciliation, not motivated by economic interest. What do you propose then? My father asked, a tone in his voice suggesting he was finally, truly willing to listen. I took a deep breath. This was it. The opportunity to transform pain into something constructive. I propose that we acknowledge the truth. We're a dysfunctional family that has caused real harm to its members. We can't erase the past, but we can decide how our future will be. I paused, looking each one in the eyes. The hotel will continue under my direction, but I'm willing to create a family council where everyone has a voice. Not for operational decisions, but to ensure grandfather's legacy endures, in philanthropic works, in community help, in the values he defended. And the shares? Roberto asked, still skeptical. They'll be earned over time, I replied firmly. Not with flattery to me, but with actions that demonstrate you truly understood grandfather's message. My mother approached me and, with some hesitation, took my hands in hers. I don't deserve a second chance, she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. But if you're willing to give me one, I promise I'll do everything possible to be the mother I should have been from the beginning. I felt my own tears welling up. Years of longing for the maternal love I never received manifested in that moment of shared vulnerability. That's all I ever wanted, Mom, I replied softly. My father joined us, followed by Lucia. Roberto remained distant, observing the scene with a mixture of confusion and resentment. I need time to process all this, he said finally, heading to the door. Take all the time you need, I called after him. The door will be open when you're ready. After Roberto left, the atmosphere in the room changed. It was as if an invisible weight had been lifted, allowing us to breathe freely for the first time in decades. The hotel staff, who had witnessed the entire scene, seemed deeply moved. Miguel discreetly began ushering them out, leaving us alone for this intensely private family moment. When it was just us and Lawyer Mendez, Lucia spoke. "What do we do now? How do we begin to repair so much damage?" With honesty, I replied. "Grandfather used to say that family wounds only heal when they're exposed to air. We've kept this resentment in darkness for too long." My father nodded slowly. "You have his wisdom, Carmen. You always have." Mendez stood, collecting his briefcase. "My work here is finished. Don Ernesto would be proud of how you handled this, Carmen." As he headed to the door, he added, "By the way, there's an additional box of your grandfather's personal documents in my office. He mentioned you would find special interest in his diaries from the years he built the hotel." After Mendez left, my family and I remained in the room, enveloped in a silence that, for the first time, wasn't uncomfortable, but contemplative. "I never asked you about your business," my mother said suddenly. $3 million in revenue, 30 employees. You must be very good at what you do." I smiled slightly. "I am. And I'd love to show you my work someday." "I'd like that," she replied, with a sincerity I'd never heard in her voice before. Lucia, always practical, intervened. "So, what happens with the rest of the family weekend? Do we continue with the planned activities?" I reflected for a moment. "I think so, but with some changes. To start, I'm going to move to the suite that corresponds to me as owner." "And what about Roberto?" my father asked. "We'll give him space," I replied. "Some need more time than others to accept the truth." That night, as the staff transferred my belongings to the hotel's main suite, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Victory, yes, but not the petty victory of revenge. Rather, the deeper one of having broken a toxic cycle. From my suite's terrace, I contemplated the same sea my grandfather loved. The salty wind caressed my face, carrying the aroma of new possibilities. "You were right, grandfather," I murmured to the wind. "True power isn't in humiliating those who hurt us, but in giving them the opportunity to change." At that moment, I remembered his words. "A hotel is like a family, Carmen. Each room is different. Each guest brings their own story. The secret is making everyone feel valued, not despite their differences, but because of them." For the first time in my life, I felt our family had the opportunity to become the kind of hotel my grandfather envisioned. A place where each person could find their space, without losing the sense of belonging to the whole. The road would be long and probably difficult. Some wounds would take years to heal completely, if they ever healed at all. But we had taken the first step. Perhaps the most important one. We had looked truth in the eyes and decided not to look away. Epilogue, voice softens, more reflective. It's been a year since that tumultuous family reunion. Hotel Miramar thrives under my direction, with changes grandfather would have wholeheartedly approved. A scholarship program for local youth, accessible rooms for guests with disabilities, a firm commitment to sustainability. My relationship with my family has evolved in ways I never imagined possible. My mother and I have a weekly lunch. We're slowly, deliberately rebuilding our bond. She no longer seeks to compete with me, but to truly know me. Sometimes, when we talk about design or business, I see a glimmer of genuine maternal pride in her eyes. Lucia was the biggest surprise. After much reflection, she decided to return to university to study social work. "I want to build something meaningful on my own merits," she told me. Her transformation has been profound and genuine. My father found an unexpected purpose coordinating activities for young entrepreneurs in the hotel's community program. He says teaching them what he learned, including his mistakes, gives him a sense of purpose that money and status never could. Roberto took 6 months to speak to me again. When he finally did, it was to ask for a job opportunity, not a free steak. He now runs the hotel's expansion department, where his ambition, properly channeled, is proving valuable. Room 108, the horrible room they housed me in that first day, has been transformed. It's now a small museum telling the story of the hotel and its founder. At the end of the tour, visitors find grandfather's letter, framed, a reminder that family businesses are, above all, about values and legacy. Every day, walking through the corridors of this hotel, which is both my inheritance and my immense responsibility, I feel grandfather's presence guiding me. I didn't choose to reveal my secret out of revenge, but for the possibility of healing it offered. And although the path hasn't been easy, the family we're building now is stronger, more authentic than the one we pretended to be. As the sign at the hotel entrance now says, we don't build walls, but bridges. We don't offer rooms, but homes. That's the true secret of Hotel Miramar. And the most valuable legacy my grandfather left me. Voice shifts to a more direct, conversational tone with a hint of warmth. So, this was my story. A crazy journey of betrayal, secrets, and an unexpected path to healing. I'd love to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done differently? Would you have dropped that bombshell sooner, or held on to the secret even longer? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Thank you so much for listening and have an excellent day.